If you measure people's wealth by how lavish their lives are, you're about to get stunned. No, really. These 10 extremely rich people live outrageously normal lives, to the point where it's frustrating. What's good about having $110 billion when you can't flash it out by buying a solid gold car, an ultra-luxurious tank, or simply sticking to the classic and getting a $500 million yacht? Well, these 10 billionaires have something else in mind. Number 10. Chuck Feeney. You may wonder what a man worth $1.5 million is doing on this list. After all, that's not even as much as a single car in Jeff Bezos' garage. Yes, as of 2022, Chuck Feeney, age 91, is worth only $1.5 million. But just 2 decades ago, he had more than $8 billion in his bank account. You might think that it takes a lot of cocaine and hookers to waste $7.9 billion in just 2 decades, but with this Irish-American businessman, a frivolous lifestyle was never a goal. Not only did he not spend this mind-blowing amount on luxurious prohibited substances, lavish vehicles, and expensive gifts for girls practicing the oldest profession, but he actually gave it all away to charity. Chuck got into the 9 Zeros Club back in the mid-1990s, primarily due to his duty-free liquor business in Asia, which he started in the 1960s. Feeney sold duty-free alcohol to American soldiers based in Korea and later expanded to other countries. His business skyrocketed when in the early 1960s he became the exclusive concession holder of duty-free sales in Hawaii. In the 70s and 80s, his duty-free shopping became the largest travel retailer in the world, granting him immense wealth and power. Feeney, however, was not interested in any of them. He secretly gave away all of his fortunes while living a modest and unspectacular life. In 1997, after a court battle with his former partner Robert Warren Miller, Feeney was outed as the man behind countless charities and donations. Forbes dubbed him the billionaire who wanted to die broke. Later, they also called him the James Bond of philanthropy, as it became evident that he gave around $8 billion to charities, which inspired people like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and others to donate a huge chunk of their earnings. Still, none of them live as modestly as Chuck. Today, at age 91, he lives in a San Francisco apartment and has a pension fund of $1.5 million. He has no yachts, cars, or houses. Only one golden item remains in his possession: his heart. Now that's what I call making an impression with your wealth. Number 9. Tim Cook. Have you heard of a small tech company called Apple? You probably have noticed them around. It's hard to miss a company worth $2.4 trillion. Well, its CEO, Tim Cook, unlike the company, has a measly $1.8 billion in his bank account. Still not bad, I agree, especially as he rarely touches his funds. Instead, Tim prefers to live a normal, modest life. A bit too normal, if you ask me. The man is the definition of a workaholic. Do you know anyone else who wakes up at 3:45 in the morning and responds to 800 emails a day? The only man with more email communication is the Nigerian prince who needs your help and is ready to split his massive fortune with you. Tim doesn't talk about himself much, as he doesn't find himself interesting. We tend to disagree on this one, but just like Cook, I also like scrambled eggs, bacon, cereal, and almond milk. Now, if you had $1.8 billion, would you be the first at the office each day? Tim sure is. Well, when you wake up at 4 in the morning, that's not particularly hard. Still, all who work under Cook agree that he's the best boss in the world. He never shouts or dismisses any of his subordinates' ideas and grievances. Number 8. Azim Premji. You'd be forgiven if the first image you can come up with when talking about Indian billionaires is a $2 billion house disguised as a skyscraper. However, Mukesh Ambani, the owner of the mesmerizing home Antilia, is not the only wealthy entrepreneur in this country of 1.3 billion. Today, we will focus on those who don't use as much electricity as the entire Mumbai metropolitan for their jacuzzi, but instead give back to society from time to time. When it comes to Azim Premji and his $9.2 billion, he is nowhere near Ambani's wealth. But Premji is probably on top when it comes to charity work and accomplishments. His Wipro was nothing more than a small family business before Azim took over. The genius is not called the Indian Bill Gates for nothing. Today, his company makes nearly 11 billion annually and constantly increases its revenue. Despite his massive bank account, which will get a new zero any time now, Premji never forgot his modest beginnings. While his peers often travel in utmost luxury in their private multi-million-dollar jets, filled with all kinds of pimplements, the Indian tech tycoon prefers to spend less and always travels in economy class. Moreover, while other billionaires have golden Rolls-Royces and Bugatti Veyrons, Premji has a lovely and comfy Honda Civic worth around $16,000. Naturally, as he gained popularity due to popular demand, he was forced to forsake his trusted Honda and now has a second-hand Mercedes-Benz, which he bought from one of his employees. Of course, from an HR perspective, purchasing a car from your employees is a motivational and reputational disaster. But Premji's reputation far precedes him, as all who work at his enterprise know that the boss is one genuinely outstanding fellow. Number 7. Mark Zuckerberg. It's weird to see Zuck so far down any wealthy person list, but let's face it, it wasn't the best year for Meta. Still, $41 billion is not so low to have panic attacks during the night, and I certainly won't lose any sleep thinking about how the Facebook guy would live with such modest savings. Well, to be honest, Mark does prefer the low-key lifestyle. Yes, he enjoys luxuries, and there are some notable purchases in his portfolio, like his Lake Tahoe compound and his Palo Alto home. Still, those are mostly investments. Of course, he does live there, but there are no crazy golden toilets, diamond chandeliers, and high-tech cannons to shoot fresh gray t-shirts every morning. Oh, wait, that last one he actually has. In fact, his homes are equipped with high-end AI assistants, but they practically cost him nothing, as he made them himself. When it comes to luxurious amenities, however, Zuckerberg is not too fond of them. He prefers practical cars like a Golf GTI, Acura TSX, or Honda Fit. All of them are below $30,000 in value. What he actually spends money on are vacations for his family and charities. A lot of charities. He spends billions in financing medical research and programs for the benefit of others. Now, if he could only make Facebook less of a marketing trap, it would be great. But hey, giving a platform to pointless adverts that offer you nothing for a lot of money can also be counted as a charity, can't it? Number 6. Ingvar Kamprad. Can you believe that a man who managed to make Lego for adults while simultaneously snuffing all the fun out of it is worth $42.5 billion? I strongly suspect that's monopoly money, but once you realize I'm talking about the owner of IKEA, this number will sound a bit more accurate. People who never had to put together an IKEA wardrobe can never truly know what desperation feels like. I guess the fact that Ingvar Kamprad didn't enjoy his billions and lived a modest and secluded life is some kind of retribution for all the misery he caused worldwide. Jokes aside, the furniture tycoon was an example of a self-made billionaire who didn't let money get into his mind. Kamprad started IKEA when he was only 17, and the brand quickly took over the world. While his finances went through the roof and roamed somewhere between Venus and Mercury, his lifestyle stood the same. While alive, he flew only coach and never changed his 20-year-old Volvo for a new one. But that's not all. Apparently, he always bought his clothes at a flea market just to save some cash. Moreover, He preferred to get his haircuts done in third world countries, as €22 seemed far too expensive for Ingvar. Somehow I don't think he had any chance of becoming BFFs with the Sultan of Brunei, who once paid $20,000 for a single haircut. Number 5. Amancio Ortega. You may not know who Amancio Ortega is, but somehow his $62.1 billion suggests you should. While Ortega on his own is not a superstar like other billionaires, his most famous fashion brand, Zara, is undoubtedly among the most popular ones in the world. The Spanish retail brand can be found worldwide with its inexpensive but stylish clothing lines. So, naturally, one would think that a fashion tycoon would be flamboyant and extravagant. Unfortunately for all paparazzi and gossip media, Ortega has never been too invested in his image. The brilliant retailer, who made one small La Coruña-based clothing shop into a global empire, gave only 3 interviews in his entire life. By all means, Ortega is the epitome of privacy, as he never did anything to get in the spotlight. Moreover, unlike most successful designers, he didn't go to live large in Paris or Milan, but stayed right where he was born, in La Coruña. To top it all off, despite his success, he proceeded to take his morning coffee from the same cafe as he always did. Now that's a man of habit. No wonder he enjoyed wearing the same old clothes and eating lunch in the company's cafeteria, surrounded by all of his employees. I'm not sure how that's not a security threat, but hey, I never owned a global fashion brand, so who am I to judge? Number 4. Alice Walton. If the first part of Walton sounds familiar, it's maybe because you often go shopping in Walton's retail business. It's a small joint called Walmart. You may have heard of it. Yes, the name might not be as imaginative as some other brands, but who cares when you have a third of a $244.86 billion business? That's what Alice Walton, one of the Walton dynasty heirs, feels like. And while if I had $62.1 billion, a Bugatti Veyron would be on top of my long list of things to buy, Alice is somewhat not as allured by the glamour this money offers. Instead, Walton prefers to invest in art and, more accurately, in sharing this art with the rest of the world. Alice spent $500 million in building her own private art collection. In 2011, she invested $50 million in opening a museum of American art in Arkansas. And if you think that's pricey, wait until you hear how much the central piece is worth. She spent $44.5 million on a single painting by George O'Keeffe. You may have noticed that this is not precisely the low-key lifestyle I presented, but in fact, the artwork is the only thing Alice spends money on, and she shares it with the world. Furthermore, she donates millions annually to artists and other causes. I wonder if that's a rebellion against the Walton family. She wanted to be a struggling artist, but her father said, "No, you will be a billionaire. No dirty New York flat for you, young lady." Number 3. Sergey Brin. Unlike Google, which knows everything, ironically, its co-founder Sergey Brin is one of the most enigmatic billionaires in the entire world. Unlike most other Russian-born billionaires who owe their wealth to Vladimir Putin and his, let's say, governing style, Sergey Brin has actually acquired his wealth through hard work, many sacrifices, and many sleepless nights. Also, unlike the rest of his compatriots, Sergey lives one relatively low-key life, where he lets his work speak louder than his purchases. So instead of buying a $500 million yacht, he invests money in many new projects. Most of them are related to the betterment of humanity. Brin spent vast amounts of his fortune on funding various reusable energy projects, as well as some space exploration gigs. Otherwise, Sergey rarely gets into the news, and for some obscure reason, Google's algorithm refuses to share any gossip about the Russian-born genius. I wonder why. Number 2. Carlos Slim. Carlos Slim has one truly inspiring underdog story. Born in Mexico to two Lebanese immigrant parents, no one expected Carlos to become one of the richest people in the world. Today, thanks to his telecom empire, Slim is worth more than $88 billion and can proudly proclaim himself the wealthiest man in Mexico. Despite his wealth, Carlos still lives the simple life he did when he first started selling sweets and drinks to his friends and family at the age of 10. Well, there is far less struggling for money now, but Slim hasn't let his fortune get into his head. And he never changed his house, even after 40 years on top. Naturally, private planes and yachts are out of his spectrum, and he even refuses to get a chauffeur, as he drives himself everywhere. Even though he has over $88 billion, he keeps his monthly salary to only $24,000. The rest, he donates to charities, funds Mexican infrastructure, and tries to fight against poverty. Number 1. Warren Buffett. If Warren Buffett were a country, he would be the 63rd wealthiest country in the entire world. I wonder what the feeling is of being richer than 2/3 of all nations on Earth. But somehow I can't even comprehend how that's possible. Well, when you own more than 0.1% of all the money in the world, I guess you get a new perspective on life. Yet with all that money, Buffett refuses to live lavishly. What can you expect from a man who, instead of some sweets or toys, bought himself stock market shares at age 11? This kid must have been a nightmare during family dinners, always discussing the market instead of crying about having to eat his vegetables. Well, it turned out this was the right call for Warren, as now he is worth more than $109.6 billion. Despite his massive fortune, Buffett lives in a cozy little house in Omaha, Nebraska. This is the same house he bought 50 years ago with his wife. He often shares that he can afford to live in the biggest mansion in the world, but it won't have the memories his home has. Moreover, although he is the owner of one of the biggest private jet companies in the world, he refuses to fly in luxury. Probably because he knows how much they scalp you for the ride. Instead, he prefers economy class, where he feels right at home. To top it all off, the man who owns 0.1% of all the money in the world drives his own modest car and has never once thought of buying a Bugatti Veyron. What's happening with all these billionaires these days? Don't they know you need a Bugatti Veyron if you want to get into the luxury zone lists more often? I guess when you have that much money and prefer not to show them, you're not really that much interested in being listed as well. Well, never mind. Their loss. Those were the 10 most modest billionaires you will ever see. Will you be just as humble if you had a 10-figure sum in your bank account? Let me know in the comments below. If you found these low-key lifestyles interesting, just wait until you hear how much William Koch paid for a single photo.